Hello. Hello, I'm Hannah LeVay, Collection Assessment Librarian at the University of Washington. First, I'm going to give a brief overview of web accessibility, and then I will discuss VPATs and keyboard navigation testing as ways to rank resources according to their probability of accessibility. The World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C, defines web accessibility as websites, tools, and technologies that are designed and developed so that people with disabilities can use them. They can perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with the web, as well as contribute to the web. How do we know if web content is accessible? The W3C has developed Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, also known as WCAG. These guidelines determine if web content is accessible when it meets certain success criteria. The current WCAG version is 2.1. WCAG 2.1 at the AAA level of success criteria is the top level of accessibility. WCAG version 2.2 is coming very soon. We don't know exactly when, but it's being finalized as we speak. WCAG has 13 guidelines, and each of those guidelines has multiple success criteria. Each success criterion has an assigned level of A, AA, or AAA. Level A criteria are core criteria required to meet the minimum acceptable level of accessibility. The AAA level, the top level, are criteria where it would be great to have these, but it's very unusual that websites would have AAA levels of accessibility. Let's look at one of these guidelines in particular. WCAG Guideline 1.2 is for time-based media. The goal is to provide an alternative to time-based media. So a level A success criteria example is captions provided for pre-recorded video. At the AA level, it's captions provided for live video. And at the AAA level, sign language interpretation provided for pre-recorded video. So as you can see, each level steps up to a more accessible feature. Guideline 1.2 has 9 total success criteria, and each one is assigned a level of A, AA, or AAA. Why do we need to know if web content is accessible? Well, besides being an important civil rights issue, there's federal guidelines and often state guidelines that require federal agencies or state agencies to develop, procure, maintain, and use information technology that is accessible to all people. And there have been many legal cases, including a recent example, Payan versus Los Angeles Community College District, that ruled that the LACCD must discontinue the use of inaccessible library databases. And by that, the judge specified that they must conform to WCAG 2.1 level AA success criteria. So going back to the previous example, it's the middle level where captions are available for live video. So that's a pretty high standard. This ruling gave many libraries a bit of a panic moment. So how do we find out which library sources are not accessible? Well, there's a variety of accessibility tools you can use to manually test web content. There's browser tools and plugins like accessibility bookmarklets and Totally. There is testing with screen readers, keyboard navigation testing, or testing with any other assistive technology that might be out there. Another option is you can collect VPATs. A VPAT is a vendor-provided accessibility template. This itemizes each WCAG success criteria for each of the 13 criteria I mentioned. And the vendor is responsible for declaring if their product supports each of those guidelines and at what level. So we can collect these reports. We can somehow manually assess each resource for each success criteria. But all these options are huge projects. Most of us don't have the expertise to get started, and it can be overwhelming. This is where many of us are now. So how do we get started? So let's remember our goal. We want to improve the accessibility of subscribed third-party library resources. And we have these barriers, the constraints. The VPATs are complicated, hard to read, and many are actually unreliable. Libraries, of course, have no control over the development of the third-party resources. We can't actually make any of the fixes we find. Libraries subscribe to many resources, so that's a very large project, and accessibility testing tools are often difficult to learn. And of course, we often have no budget or time to address these issues. We often have to do this work as part of our regular workload with no additional resources. So, plan of action. At the University of Washington, we decided to use a combination of keyboard testing and VPAT assessment to find which resources are most likely to not be accessible. And then we negotiate with those vendors of the inaccessible products and work with them to encourage them to improve the accessibility of their products. We chose to use keyboard testing to manually test our subscribed resources because it's easy to learn, easy to use, and there's no software to download. And generally speaking, if a website is accessible using keyboard navigation, it will also work with various assistive technologies. Quote, an accessible website does not rely on the mouse. It makes all functionality available from a keyboard. Then people with disabilities can use assistive technologies that mimic the keyboard. Here, I've just listed the keyboard navigation commands that we use. I'm not going to read them all, but basically all you really need to do is to hit Tab to navigate forward through the page, Shift Tab to go backwards, and hit Enter to submit a link or button. That's pretty much it. It's very easy to learn and easy to use. So like I said, we chose to use keyboard testing, and we decided to use only the keyboard and see if we can complete the actions that a researcher would commonly use with each resource. So can you search? Can you select a search result, like a journal article? Can you interact with the search result, like turn the pages? And then for media, can you play and pause the content? We are not testing the content itself at this time, just the interface. This test just really finds if common actions can be accomplished. It doesn't test for all kinds of accessibility beyond that. But given our constraints, keyboard testing gives us a pretty good picture of the accessibility of each of the resource. The last time I counted our keyboard testing results, we went through each resource and tested it with just the keyboard. We tested 606 resources and 90% of those passed. Here's an excerpt of the keyboard navigation test results page that I linked to on the previous slide. And this is a public page, so anyone can refer to it. And then separately, we did a VPAT assessment. So a quick overview of VPATs. I have a link here to the current VPAT report template, which is version 2.4 as of February 2020. And a big problem with VPATs is they can be long and complicated and overwhelming to read, especially for anyone new to accessibility. And finally, a warning that just if a resource has a VPAT, that does not mean that it is accessible. Ideally, a third-party accessibility consultant will be the one filling out the VPAT for the company, testing each success criteria. But in reality, it's often filled out by vendors, by their marketing team, who have very little accessibility expertise, and they've just been asked to fill out this form. So we get a wide range of results. Because VPATs can be so long and complicated, we decided to look at just a few details in each VPAT. And these details give us a very good sense of the overall quality of the VPAT. So the key details include metadata like for name, date, contact, evaluation methods, and applicable standard, which I have a screenshot here on the top of a VPAT template showing the metadata section. And then later in the form, we look at 1.3.1, 211, and 412 name, role, and value. Depending on even just how the VPAT is filled out, you can learn a lot about the quality of the VPAT itself. Here's another screenshot. If you scroll down further, you would see first all the level A success criteria for each guideline. You can see here for each guideline, there's one or more success criteria for level A. And then the vendor would go into the conformance level field and enter supports, partially supports, or does not support, and the remarks and explanations field and fill that out with comments. We like to see a lot of comments in that field. Not shown here, the next, if you kept scrolling down, would be all the AA criteria and then the AAA criteria. So for our VPAT metadata project, we reviewed our VPATs that we had collected and extracted the data I referred to for those key details. So we simply copied the text for the selected VPAT sections into a spreadsheet. And then except for the evaluation methods section, we tried to summarize that with either blank if they just left it blank, minimal if they said something vague, or full if they really itemized each tool they used to test. We had some challenges. We found that many VPATs are not actually filled out completely. Sometimes it was hard to use our scale to summarize evaluation methods because of the wording used by the vendors. They might just say assistive technologies versus naming specific products, or testing is based on general product knowledge, which is very vague. We would probably call that minimal. In our experience, we found a wide range of detail provided for VPATs. Some we've had some really informative, while others do not provide much information about our product's accessibility at all. For example, on the left-hand side here, we have a VPAT where the vendor simply entered supports in the conformance level field all the way down, and no remarks for explanations, just blank. And then on the right side, you see all this text just for guideline 4.1.2 name, role, and value success criteria. This vendor has entered that it partially supports this success criterion, and then this whole page of notes in the remarks and explanation field about why it supports and the exceptions to when it supports, and it's very verbose. It's clear that they really looked into it and really thoroughly tested it. One thing to notice here is we almost don't even need to read all this text. The fact that they have put so many comments in supports the idea that they have put some time into filling out the VPAT, as opposed to on the other side, because where the remarks and explanations field is no comments. This gives the impression that they did not spend much time on this. Now, I took the results of our keyboard testing and our VPAT assessment, put them together into a rubric with 4 elements. 0 is the best score for each section. Then points are added where each point is a mark against the resource. So we have the VPAT completion score, just considering how does it look? Is it an out-of-date VPAT? Are there a lot of comments? One time we received a VPAT from a vendor that was just the blank template with no edits at all, and that's not very helpful. And then sometimes they have a complete VPAT, totally filled out, and it looks great. So that would be a 0. Next, we have the VPAT success score. Like, what does it actually say? So as opposed to how completely it's filled out, this is, so what does it actually say? Is it mostly supports with lots of comments and they listed out the various methods they use to evaluate? That's great. If it's mostly does not support and there's no comments and they didn't even mention their evaluation methods, that is not great. Next, we bring in the keyboard test. It gets 3 points if it failed, and 0 points if it passed. And then for the last one, I checked to see if the VPAT 211 keyboard testing success criteria and our own keyboard test results agree with each other. So it gets 0 if they agree, and 1 point if they don't agree. So for the overall score, the higher the score is the higher risk of inaccessibility, and it ranges from 0 to 10. So here's a screenshot of some of our VPAT rubric scores, and this was sorted from lowest to highest score. So here's a handful of resources that returned very good scores on the VPAT assessment and passed the keyboard test. These resources are most likely accessible. Again, we're not testing the resource to see if it is completely accessible. We're more getting a sense of which resources are probably accessible or probably not accessible. And again, this results list sorted from highest to lowest score. These resources probably are inaccessible. So the conclusion for our metadata work, our VPAT metadata work, we were able to do 53 complete assessments with the rubric. We've only collected 65 VPATs total, and 12 of those we didn't have keyboard tests done for yet. So I looked at just those 53 that also had keyboard test results. We found some good information. We found that 15% had a higher score, which means they're more likely to be inaccessible. These results are more nuanced than just a pass-fail. For example, the keyboard test is a pass-fail kind of test. And so when you combine the VPAT metadata and the keyboard test, we get a ranked list of resources and vendors to find which vendors are more likely having inaccessible products. So this helps us refine our scope so that moving forward, we can focus on communicating with the vendor who scored the highest. Remember, that indicates that their products are more likely to be inaccessible. So what we can do, we can work with those vendors. We can ask them to add accessibility, like adding accessibility language to the license. We can ask for a 1-year license with the intent to renew next year only if accessibility improvements are made in that time. We can include accessibility findings as a factor when we consider products to license or to cancel, and just overall inform vendors that accessibility impacts our decision making. Vendors need to work with us to improve accessibility. They are our partners in this work, not our adversaries. I found that often a vendor is not even aware that their product is not accessible, and they appreciate working with us and learning how to improve their products. And here I've included a list of additional resources, some of which I mentioned earlier in the talk. I did want to point out the Library Accessibility Alliance, the LAA. This is an alliance of about 100 libraries in the US who are pooling their resources together to do thorough accessibility tests from a third-party vendor. And their results are available on their page. You can go there, read the results. You can also read if the vendor has responded to the test, get more information about very specific details for those resources. The LAA also provides some model license language to use in new licenses and then a toolkit for getting started. Thank you for attending. My name is Hannah LeVay, and you can email me at levay@uw.edu. Thank you.